read the description of this session that you're about to see and was a little startled to learn that this is intended to be a compelling discussion on the critical role of text messaging in political campaigns. So I want to make sure if they have evaluations that you put us down for being compelling. That's your key gerund in this case. All right, we really could fill an entire day with a conversation about political messaging. We're not going to do that. We're going to fill our 30 minutes here. But I wanted to set the stage, and I'm going to ask Anna to sort of share some framing statistics about what's going on in the political messaging space and the increase that we're about to see between now and the end of 2024. So Anna, take it away.
So we have 230 days left until the November election, so we're all quite busy up here, and we have 3 channels for political organizations to message. We have short code, which is a high-volume solution for large-scale federal, statewide, and mayoral campaigns. We have toll-free, which is another channel that has seen significant adoption from all types of campaigns. And lastly, 10DLC, which is likely the most utilized scalable solution for federal, state, and even a lot of local campaigns. To provide a little background on Campaign Verify, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that verifies the identity of campaigns for 10DLC. We only verify identity. We don't look at the nature of the campaign or any of its content. And our mission is to prevent political spoofing and the resulting disinformation and hopefully preserve trust in the political channels. Since our launch in 2021, we have verified over 14,000 political campaigns, and we've definitely seen a greater embrace of the service and less friction, and we do hope to eventually expand to other channels.
Thanks. I want to ask some of you, those of you who were here in Miami last year will recall that we did a similar panel, and we have recidivists with us today. We have Krishna and Thomas joining us. Krishna oversees a lot of progressive messaging campaigns for the political world, and Thomas is in the more conservative edge of things. But they agree on a lot of principles of how this ought to be done, irrespective of what the content of the message is. So you two are on the front lines of this topic. And so I want to know, looking back in the last year, what's changed, what scares you, what do you think's coming at us? And I'll start just alphabetically, with Krishna. Okay.
I actually think we are moving in a really positive direction. Majority of the campaigns and organizations that we work with now are 10DLC registered, which 2 years ago was not the case. If you are familiar with political messaging, then you are familiar that there was quite a bit of resistance in this space. And not only are they registering, but organizations, especially large-scale organizations with lists that go into the hundreds of thousands or millions, are becoming a lot more strategic and thoughtful about who they're texting and the frequency at which they're texting them. So for some of our larger clients, we're seeing that they have segmentation lists about anywhere from 10 to 70 segments. And this ranges from the most to least desirable targets that they want to text, right? The people who are chronically giving over a text message versus the people who may have glanced at the website, they may have signed a petition, and as people engage more, they move up that list. As they engage less, they move down. And that's ensuring that we're texting the right people and spending money on the people who actually want to hear from us and are likely to donate. And then the second piece of what we've been seeing, and again, they're being more strategic on this, is observing the downstream revenue. So somebody gives over a text message once, but then we look over the next several months, are they continuing to give over text, or was that a one-off? And they're actually chronic email donors. And so if they're a chronic email donor, again, they're gonna move down that list. And so we're actually texting people overall, even these are campaigns and organizations that are texting multiple times a week, but they're not hitting the same people again and again. They're actually being very thoughtful about that cadence, and that's actually resulting in higher net revenue for the organization, but it's also resulting in significantly lower opt-outs. So even though they're texting at a high frequency, their opt-outs are staying at under 2%, and they are getting higher engagement all around. And so we're seeing that they're thinking more about the longevity of their programs because they do know they're being scrutinized. They do know that the carriers and aggregators know who they are. And so this is one of the many steps they're taking to be thoughtful actors in how they're sending messaging. And I think that's moving us in a positive direction. As far as what worries me, AI. I think there's a lot of positives with that, but this is going to be our first election with AI at the forefront, and messaging is not exempt from that. And one of the things that we think about frequently is making sure that we're working with good actors who are not sending misinformation. They're not sending AI-generated misinformation. And one of the largest political kind of bipartisan groups, the American Association of Political Consultants, Thomas and I are both members of that. They have openly come out repeatedly saying that they do not condone AI-driven misinformation campaigns, smear campaigns. There's zero tolerance policy for that. And so now it's really up to us, and we're working hard with knowing who our clients are to ensure that we're not working with those groups and that they aren't using our channels to spread that type of misinformation.
Thomas?
So over on the Republican side, the trends that I've seen, I think top of mind is heightened price sensitivity from our clients. So 2022 was supposed to be a great year for Republicans, and it turned out to be a very disappointing year. And simultaneously and subsequently to that, the Republican primary felt like it was over before it started. And Republican primaries on both sides of the aisle, especially presidential ones, tend to be opportunities to grow new donor bases and bring new donors into the political party, and that has largely not happened. And so we have very price-sensitive clients as a result. And this has led to, I think, two positive outcomes. One is a reappreciation of the benefits of short code, because they understand that messaging prices are a lot cheaper over short code. And so we've seen a renaissance. We offer both short code and 10DLC as our 98% of our clients' traffic. And then on the 10DLC side, we've seen a much more serious push to registration because they understand that they need access to a channel that does not include increased carrier termination fees. So these are good trends. We want to get all of our clients registered. Where we see gaps in the registration path is not so much in the federal level. I think when the phone carriers and TCR came together and created the political messaging class, they did a great job of covering the federal races. So Congress, federal Congress, federal Senate, president, PACs, IEs. But at the state level and down ballot, there is still a lot of entities that are eligible to engage in political communications in every other channel except texting. And if they are eligible for political messaging, their throughput caps can be much lower than what they need in practice. And then I'm always going to say polling and survey is a gray zone that, as it exists right now in 2024 and has for the last couple cycles, you cannot get accurate polling and survey without SMS as a channel. And that is still an area that does not get the political use case in a way that matches up with how political and survey clients actually operate. All that aside, 2024 is going to be easily 50% bigger than 2022. In 2022, there were about 16 billion political messages sent. So I would be surprised if we didn't at least reach 25 billion political messages between now and November 5th of this year. Real quickly on the threats, I think AI is the Wild West right now. AI is progressing so quickly that the way that we talk about AI at this panel will already be outdated in about 2 weeks, let alone 6 long months from now. And political campaigns are highly innovative because they're going out of business in 6 months. They have to figure out exactly what is the best use of their resources over the next 6 months. And so they will adopt anything if they see it as a way to increase their ROI. And the less scrupulous actors will push the boundaries as far as they can. So as a political CSP, that's what keeps me up at night, is making sure that our clients are following the best practices of the APC, and also making sure they're working with our ecosystem partners to make sure this remains a trusted channel.
Thank you. So, Jonathan, so people don't think you're just security up here, I want to, right, who's that guy? I'm delighted to have heard from both edges of the political spectrum about what you're seeing forward-facing for a little more carrier or back into the infrastructure aggregator. What are you seeing? What are you fearing? What are you future? And I don't mean to shut you out either. If you got some thoughts on this, feel free to jump in. Okay.
Well, we're ramping up our teams to be able to accept the onslaught of campaigns. So I run both the compliance aspects of our business and the service implementation. So that's turning up toll-free numbers, short codes, and 10 DLCs. We have to be able to accept these campaigns. And political campaigns, by nature, do take quite a bit more time for us to review them. And I would say that we probably would have and could have more traffic than we do today, but we're pretty strict about that. Ask our customers that are there, they've heard that feedback. We take the campaigns apart, we look at the terms and conditions and make sure there's clear consent. So we do what we can on the front end to make sure that the campaigns are above board. We also have conversations with these customers as they onboard in ASPs, asking them hard questions about where do you get your consent, and these are the rules that Sinch plays by. But I think that only gets us part of the way. So looking at the traffic that they're sending over the pipe, and to be clear, it's using the tools that we have today. We've built some of these in-house. You've heard from some great vendors on what they have out there, and we do use all these folks, the proof points, the cloud marks, adaptives. Through our acquisitions, we've got all these folks in our toolkit. We've also spent about 4.5 years building our own AI engines that are in-house, our own IP, and we have to take the time to look at that data every day. We built a dashboard, and I think there's other aggregators out there that have also done this, not a lot, that actually looks at the particular message that's flagged as 776 or 27 and ties it to both the opt-outs. It has the campaign information imported from TCR, so we can look quickly and see if there's drift between the campaign that's on record and what content that's being sent. We have carriers, the ones that do provide this information to us today, the ability to see what subscribers are reporting this in that channel. It's important that we get this from all of the messaging MNOs in the partnership. We don't have all the color, we only have that percentage of a third or whatnot that's out there. It's super valuable. With the opt-outs, we've got some tangible, some of the carriers have in their contract language about where when you exceed a certain percentage, it's pretty low, 4%, for opt-outs that we can take some action. But beyond that, we have conversations with all of those folks that are there when they trend in a certain direction. And we can track this by 7 days or 2 weeks, a month, 90 days to see how a particular campaign is going. And that is the tools we have today. We need more, but our toolkit is what it is.
Well, doing what you can for now.
Right.
And my own thought on this is that I enjoyed the collapse of premium SMS. Anybody remember that? And we were astounded at the ingenuity that was brought to the game. Those of us who were in the space were redlined in terms of if our phone numbers turned up, then we got a different message than everyone else in the world. And I just fear, but also think no, that we're gonna see some kind of spectacular hoax that's coming our way that we just sorrowfully lack the imagination to see what's coming. Thomas, I want to go back to one. You quoted a stat about what you thought the volume was going to be. Was that a partisan stat? Was that just what you think the Republican world, or was that a global stat?
No, that's both sides.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and what was the number again?
25 billion.
Dang, okay, good. I want to turn, if we can, to talk a little bit about the critical element of making sure that all the players are on the same page within this ecosystem. Everyone in this room has gone through trying to explain to your cousin, the physical therapist, what you do for a living, and about 2 sentences in, you know the look. So this is a very complex ecosystem. It's poorly understood out in the general public, and I think that is one of the biggest challenges. It's a big enough problem if a payday loan company gets screwed over and their messages don't go through. They don't have a lot of recourse. But it is a huge problem in the world of the political. You get a political campaign wrong, you better hope that that candidate does not get elected, because if she does, your CEO is going to find herself raising her right hand at a congressional hearing into what's wrong with texting and why did my messages get blocked. So it's particularly critical in this group. And I also think it's important to note that the rules are different for political messaging. They sort of used charitable as a human shield well, we ought to let charity calls and political stuff go through because that's free speech. So it's really murky, and yet there's a vital importance in my mind of making sure that everyone across the entire complex ecosystem is on the same page. So sometimes it feels like a game of telephone, and not in a good way. What does this panel, what do you guys have in terms of suggestions for how to make sure that everyone's operating off the same song sheet? Let's start with you, Jonathan, because you had to go last.
Yeah. Thank you. There's some initiatives here, relatively new, spun up, headed up by TCR, to be able to host with participation. We do need all the aggregators, and, DCAs and CSPs. We use the terms in the ecosystem there to host their compliance information, and this is also archive information about what the rules are to operate. Because you should hear the same story or message, regardless if you're going to a Sinch or an InfoBip or a Twilio about what is allowed. Whether you're running a campaign, and I'll just say a couple of the ones that are more challenging, sole proprietor and UCAS, and then you've got K through 12 and political messaging special applications. But the goal here is to have a common resource where everyone can point to, and if you are that partner running traffic through those, partners, you have access to all the repositories. It prevents anybody from saying that I haven't seen this before, it's the first time I'm aware of it. They do sign in the TCR agreement, all CSPs sign language that says I understand I have to comply with the 2023 messaging best practices. However, reading that and the ability for aggregators to put that in a digestible format, explaining what this means and what those rules applied in the best light from both carrier agreements and contracts that we're under as DCAs to how a small, medium business can onboard traffic. And that's the real challenge. It's the folks that haven't been doing messaging before. And they're the folks that need, and it was really designed to utilize that. So common repository, I think it's coming. Stay tuned.
Okay.
So when I think about unifying communications, like it's not just the physical therapist that doesn't understand texting, it's our own political clients. Like they are not experts in political texting. We're supposed to be, and they go to us for answers. And I think that there's a two-way communication bridge that honestly this event last year began to build in a qualitatively different and exciting way. Just two anecdotes to like help understand the differences in political messaging from other messaging types. One is opt-out. So this last cycle, we had a presidential campaign client that we ran their short code, and they had a 30% opt-out rate on their short code. Why? Because this candidate picked up a lot of momentum, had a huge number of opt-ins and subscribers and supporters, and then that candidate started dropping in the polls, and all those people left. And so 30% sounds like a terrible messaging campaign. That's actually a pretty, like political brands ebb and flow much more rapidly than Coca-Cola does. Another example on the TCR 10DLC side is message drift, campaign message drift. So campaign message drift in political campaigns can be much wider than what you would expect from static mainstream marketing brands. One of the primary use cases that our clients use texting for is direct response. So literally something happens in the news and they want to go out and start talking about this totally random thing, unrelated to their other messaging templates that, 5 that they've populated. So you could have a client suddenly sending a message saying like, Budweiser is going woke, I'm introducing legislation to protect consumers. And so now this message campaign could get, and we have seen this happen, flagged as spam for messaging drift, when really it's just that is part of what political communications look like. Over on the solution side, what I know that Krishna and I have talked about is we don't want to repeat what happened, for instance, last year with the change in policy regarding Act Blue and Win Red pages, which are the major donation fundraising platforms used by Republican and Democrats respectively. And so when this policy change came out from the phone carriers, it took me personally weeks to find out what the new policy was, and I was simultaneously doing blocking and tackling for dozens of clients and committees that wanted to know what the new rules were, and I didn't have an answer. And so the only way I was able to keep them at bay was to say, I am going through my personal network and taking this to the top. Now, if you don't have that kind of personal network, as I am lucky to have, and you're a vendor in this space, you don't want to appear as if you don't know what you're talking about, and so you make things up. And so that creates massive amounts of confusion among our clients. It creates distrust. And so even having a unified place where changes in policy are posted, so I can point to someone and say, you don't have to trust me, go read this online, and here's a link. And then have advanced warnings so we can begin telegraphing this and getting our clients to wrap their heads around, or get their lawyers on the phone if they have to update their T&Cs and a privacy policy. That would be amazing. And if we have a September or October surprise, it's going to look really ugly if we don't have those communication places.
Absolutely second both of them and what they had to say. Just to go back a little bit, a large reason why adoption of 10DLC was so slow in the political space is because there wasn't that clear channel of communication. So organizations, campaigns were getting mixed messages from different vendors, from different providers. Some were using fear tactics, like, oh, your messaging's going to get shut down. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? What is this 10DLC? What is this thing? Like, I've been sending my messages just fine until now. And we absolutely are seeing more and more of that need to have that central unified place to send clients, to send organizations. So it becomes less about trust. And it also is going to make life easier for good actors and a little bit more difficult for bad actors, because there is no way to obscure the truth, because we're seeing fewer and fewer of them. But whenever you do have vendors in the space who are willing to bend the rules for their clients, and they say, oh, well that other vendor doesn't know what they're talking about. You can send this messaging. You don't have to worry about registering, right? And there's less of that, but it still exists. So if it becomes more of, to Thomas's point, go here to this singular website, all of the DCAs, the CSPs, TCR, everybody sanctions this language. This is the official party line, so to speak. It makes life significantly easier, and it builds more trust. Because right now, I can't tell you the number of calls that I join, whether it's with AAPC or other vendors, and people are still getting the facts wrong. And they don't mean to. It's because they're getting mixed messages from different DCAs or CSPs. It's because, they know a guy in the space that got a different message. And so particularly in regards to the privacy policy, I remember the first time we started working with our clients to get their privacy policies updated, it took weeks. We got multiple rejections. They were like, well, we're doing everything you're telling us to do. And we were giving them all the information that we were being given. And then if we were working with multiple providers, multiple DCAs, the privacy policy language that was submitted, or the application, the form that was submitted to one, did not necessarily work for the other. And so then there was another layer of frustration. And so having that consistency, it's going to, I think, reduce the administrative burden for everyone, but it's also going to make these organizations a lot more enthusiastic to register, because the question we started getting was, well, we're trying to register. We were told we need to register to send our messaging. This is compliant. But now that I'm trying to register, why are they making it so hard? Why is it so difficult to get approved for 10DLC when I'm clearly a legitimate campaign, right? Someone running for a US Senate, someone with a large established super PAC, and we don't necessarily always have a good answer for that, right? Especially when we're working through the new policy as it's being implemented. So I think if we can have that in place in the coming months, then it leaves no room for anyone to say, I didn't know, or this other vendor told me that I don't have to follow these steps, because we have some official language there.
I was encouraged this morning to learn more from Stephanie Lashley about bandwidth, sort of leaning into the political space and hosting its, I forget what they call it, something like advisory committee or something like that. And I know, and this is an audible, I know we didn't talk about this before, but Campaign Verify also has an advisory group. Talk a little about the importance of the things that you have learned from the practitioners that has been useful feedback and a two-way street to allow the aggregate DCA and carrier world to sort of understand the different use case that is political.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a pretty robust advisory board. We meet approximately every quarter, and it's become a little bit of a 10 DLC therapy session, particularly on this issue. They bring it up every single time that a lack of communication is causing problems, and unfortunately compliance issues because they just don't understand and they don't know and they don't get the information quickly enough. So we're happy to work with TCR and every single player to make sure everyone understands that there are clear standards and guidelines that they can follow. I don't think any player should be operating in a silo, and I think that's very problematic right now. And I don't think any of the CSPs or campaigns will, at least most of them are not trying to cause problems and break the rules. But I think it's inevitable if there is a lot of confusion, particularly with like last minute rules and guidelines. I do think most of the CSPs are good players, and about 50% of the political campaigns are good players. No, I'm just kidding. I think
More than that.
It's
there's
half to
a
give
lot
the
of
rest
good
of admin.
intention, and we just need to work on it. That's definitely the biggest problem for our advisory board.
We have a couple of minutes. We have AI on our list too. I worry a little bit. We've beaten that topic to death today, but this again is a particular use case. Take me from somebody talk about AI here. Right, Thomas,
Oh, I
go
love
ahead.
talking about AI.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so
Go.
we were the first Republican CSP to introduce an AI tool into our software. It's an amazing time saver for campaigns, especially that are small. They can just put in the URL of their campaign website and then ask for a fundraising template, a get out the vote template, an educational piece, an event invite. They can even choose the conversation tone, like is it urgent, is it playful? And then they have drafts that they have to manually choose and edit before they send it outside of our platform. And we don't allow third-party AI tools to be piped into our platform as part of our quality control. So that's where just an example of how we've used AI to positively leverage campaign time so that they can send better messages with less time investment. On the flip side, we've all heard about these examples of deep fakes. There are now companies in this political texting space and voice that are connecting live AI agents to voters. We don't do that. And right now, it's, again, sort of like the Wild West. The FCC hasn't, to my mind, said anything saying you cannot do this, but there are already companies that are doing tens of thousands. I think the case study I saw was 50,000 live calls from an AI voice agent contacting voters, asking them to contact their state legislator about pending legislation, and it was extraordinarily successful. There's also text messaging platforms that, like the Dean Phillips, I think it was the Dean Phillips app, I remember getting that name wrong, where you can speak with the politician, but it's an AI agent. And so political campaigns are doing this right now, and political software is enabling it. And I see that as very dangerous without guardrails. And right now we've had no messaging from the MNOs, from the aggregators about how they feel about those kind of tools. If that's something that we don't build, someone else is going to build it and already has.
I don't know where I stand on that. I'm not a political guy at all. I think, you know, it's kind of like mail merge. If I got a attaboy David from some candidate to whom I'd given money, okay, that's kind of cute. But I can see it would be, and Kara's making faces at me here, but I can see that could get insidious as well. So, Jonathan, you talk about AI.
Well, so it's a great initiative that you have that in-house. And I think on our earlier calls leading up to this, I asked the question of, do you control that? Is that your own garden? And you said, yes, both you. If you're looking at building this and what you have in place today, you can't let someone bring their own AI. And that's the first steps is making sure that you understand the power and what can happen along with the abuse. So that's a question that everyone should be doing when talking to large ASPs at onboarding is, how do you use this? Talk to me through all the mechanisms you have. Do you let customers, folks bring this on board? And then what mechanisms do you have to screen this in your house? So not just the aggregators and carriers deal with that. There was something that happened, but what tools do you have to prevent this? At Sinch, we've got, and I think most of the aggregators have the ability to look at and deduplicate MMS images. Most of the problems, I think, have come from either voice or someone that's pretending to be something they're not. To deduplicate those images and then and screen them, but this is a really challenging area to operate in. So we all have some more work to do here to do a better job. In the same vein, I also think there's a real advantage here where we can use some of the powerful chatbots and tools that are out there to try to enhance the relationship. This came from P2P messaging. You remember that? And this was the idea is that you have this conversation with folks that may be sitting in representing a party or electorate that's texting with other people to engage them. And what I see, and I think looking at the data is super key and critical to understand what's happening there. But to deploy these tools where if someone opts out, of course send them, and I think everybody here at this table also recognizes and responds to not just opt out, but all the other conditional opt-out keywords that also say they don't want to participate. But how about those folks that give a thumbs up, those tap backs and emojis that are also looking for further conversation? Most of the people that I looked at, and I read all the responses from the New York Times articles, I looked at Reddit pages about why political messaging, there's a lot of pages about this, talking about how consumers are seeing this data. And when I look at the data, I don't see the kind of feedback that I would expect to see. Knowing that it's valuable, I think we can all say it's really valuable whether you get a thumbs down or a thumbs up or anything, the 100% sign of where that is, but why not take that as an opportunity to look for dialogue? And it's a question, like do you then turn around and make a phone call or provide this number to another party to call this person and say it looks like you're interested and maybe this is the way you're voting? But from a consumer perspective, you look at all these responses that come back, whether it's negative or positive, and in the positive area, I don't see anybody replying back in the same channel. And it should be happening closer to real time. If you're going to engage with someone, they expect, a lot of consumers expect there's another human on the other side of the pipe that is receiving or sending this message. And I think we're losing that traction that we've worked so hard to gain in this channel if we don't treat it in the same mechanism by putting it to where you do interact with people. So that's the opportunity where AI is, if it can be deployed in the right fashion.
We're at 33:57 right now, so I'm going to end this now. I hope you found this compelling. And we're going to stick around, but I don't feel like you need to stick around for us. So I would like to start by applauding this compelling panel. Thank you so much. It was great.